Hey, this is Derek. So now that DMC5 has been out for a couple days and we've been hands-on with the game and all the characters, I thought it'd be a good idea to make a quick video about one of the most important aspects of playing the game, the controls. Now, in the spirit of previous Devil May Cry games, there's a lot of chargeable moves. For example, Nero's charge shot, his Devil Breaker overdrives, and both Dante and V have multiple charge moves. Now, the charge moves can be really difficult to use effectively with the default controls because everything is mapped to the face buttons. So I wanted to share some thoughts that I had regarding a more optimized control scheme for both the PS4 and Xbox. So the initial setup I'm going to show you is the same for both consoles, and then I'll show you the setup I've been using, which is a little bit different because I have an Xbox Elite controller, which has a couple extra buttons on the back, which I'll get to in a moment. Now, these aren't going to work for everyone, so as always, take them as a suggestion and experiment to find your own unique setup that works best for you. So let's dive in with the PS4 controller. Now, personally, I prefer having one setup that can be used for every single character. And where the buttons are different, I've marked Nero or universal moves in white, V is in the blue text, and Dante is in the red. So my goal when setting up controls for games like this is to move any button that ever needs to be held down, whether it's for a charge move or whether it's for powering up the Devil Trigger if you're playing as Dante, for example. I want to move buttons like that to a shoulder button, and that's exactly what I've done here. So you can see across the board, triangle is always melee attack, or in V's case, it's for shadow. Square is one that I basically would never touch on that side of the face button. I basically stick to the right side. And so that'll be for Nero's breakaway or destroying the Devil Triggers. It'll also be for V's auto attack, which I basically never use, and it'll be for swapping guns for Dante. Now, circle is for Nero's exceed move, and I like it there because it's very close to triangle and it's easy to flick with the bottom of my thumb when I'm pressing the melee attack button. Now for V, I put that to charge Devil Trigger. Again, it's very easy to push and hold that down with your thumb, even while you're mashing or holding the melee attack button, which is triangle. And of course, it'll be change swords for Dante. So you basically have change guns with square, and then we have change swords with circle, so that they're on either side. And I have X as jump, which if you've seen my DMC3 control video, I usually prefer having jump as a shoulder button, but in DMC5, the window for jump canceling is quite generous, and so it actually works okay as a face button. You have more than enough time to transfer your thumb from X to triangle in order to do your jump cancels. Now, this is where we get to the shoulder buttons. So things like Nero's Devil Breaker or Dante's style button, these can be moves where, depending on how you're playing, a lot of the times you might have to charge up, especially if you're playing Nero. So that's going to be a button that you're going to be holding down a lot. So naturally, it's in the first slot on the shoulder buttons. R2 for gun attack, whether it's for both Dante and Nero, and it's going to be shadow for V. So again, in all of those cases, they all have a charge move for the gun attack, so it makes sense for that to be a trigger as well. L1 I have for Nero's Devil Bringer. In some cases, the capture and hold for Nero's Devil Bringer is back in this game. So again, it makes sense for it to be a chargeable move. For V, I mean, it just makes sense to summon Nightmare because it's basically his Devil Trigger. I'm just used to having that button there. And then, of course, for Dante's Devil Trigger, if you're going to go to his, I forget what it's called, the Majin form, you do have to press and hold that shoulder button. Or the Devil Trigger button, so it makes sense for it to be a shoulder as well. And then finally, lock on, I mean, that almost is guaranteed to be a shoulder button. You're always holding it down. So I have that in the final slot as L2. And basically how I'd hold the controller is I would essentially claw it so that both my index and middle finger can cover all four controllers just like this. Now, it takes a bit of getting used to, but once you'll adapt, you'll actually notice a huge increase in your gameplay and the ability to micro a lot of the different moves and techniques that you have. Now, for those of you on Xbox like me, the layout is exactly the same. And while you're taking a quick look at that, I did want to stress that regardless of which controller you're using, you may feel more comfortable holding down certain triggers or the bumpers. In differently than others. So for example, with Xbox, to me it feels a lot more natural to hold down the back triggers as opposed to the bumpers. It's a little bit awkward. So naturally, I've mapped the two buttons that I hold down the most, which is lock on and gun attack. I'm almost always charging gun attack, and lock on you interchange almost constantly. And so it makes sense for me for these to be those back triggers because I feel more comfortable holding those down. So again, by all means, experiment and find something that's going to work for you. And finally, here's my setup. Now it's a bit wonky because I'm using the Elite controller, which I mentioned. It can have up to 4 additional buttons on the back, but I'm just using 2 here, and I've mapped them to the Devil Breakers and Dante style button, or V's cane, on the right hand side, and jump on the left. Now this way I can mash A for the Devil Breaker with my thumb, or I can charge it with that back button on the right hand side. And with jump, it's on the right bumper, but I'll never really press that because again it's mapped to that button on the back on the left hand side. So I basically never need to press right bumper, and that way I only actually have to claw the controller with my left hand, and it feels a lot more comfortable, at least for me, to play like that. Okay folks, that about wraps up my controller knowledge. So as always, I hope this video helps spark some new ideas for your own custom setup. Click here to subscribe for more DMC content on the way, and follow me on Twitter and watch me live on Twitch. The links are in the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.